Have you ever wondered why the moment you feel most broken is also the moment you feel most alone? Not because there's no one around, but because even your own voice no longer answers. The mirror reflects a stranger. The eyes have seen too much. The silence inside you feels like exile. What you once called love now echoes like betrayal. And still, somewhere beneath the wreckage, something stirs, not hope, not yet, but a question. Who am I now that I am no longer who he loved? The woman who has been broken does not simply carry pain, she carries myth. Her suffering is archetypal. Her tears are not just for a lost lover, but for the girl who believed that love would save her. That someone else's gaze would finally make her visible. That being chosen would mean being enough. But the soul does not grow where illusions live. And Carl Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What breaks you is never just the man. It is what he mirrored, what he awakened, what he left unspoken. The way he walked away echoed the way your father turned his back. The way he dismissed your needs revived the first time you swallowed your truth to keep the peace. The ache is layered, ancestral, inherited. The wound is not new, only exposed. This is the work of the shadow, the part of you you were taught to hide in order to be loved. Your anger, your hunger, your knowing, your too muchness. To become the good girl, you learn to amputate your fire. But what is repressed does not disappear. It festers. It attracts its opposite. It pulls in lovers who seem to worship you until they don't. Until your silence becomes unbearable. Until you realize he wasn't loving you, he was loving your mask. And when the mask shatters, so does the illusion. You wake up alone, not just in a room, but in a life that no longer fits. You've outgrown your own self-abandonment. The lie can't hold you anymore. You try to go back to fix it, to plead, to bend, to contort. But the door you're knocking on no longer opens, because what left wasn't him. It was your former self, slipping out the back, whispering, "This is not your story anymore." You are not meant to live in the ache of being almost loved. The high priestess archetype emerges in this crucible. She rises not from perfection, but from devastation. Her power is born from sitting with the unbearable truth without turning away. She does not beg. She does not chase. She listens to the tremor under her ribs, the scream behind her smile, the whisper in her bones that says, "There is more." To love yourself after being broken is not an affirmation. It is a descent. It is returning to the place where you first believed you had to earn love and choosing to reclaim it without condition. It means sitting with your own shadow, not to fix her, but to forgive her. To stop punishing her for being too soft, too open, too hopeful. It is to say, "I see you. You were never wrong for wanting love. You were just taught to search for it outside yourself." The truth is, love after betrayal must be alchemical. It must transform you or it will repeat. Until you know your worth as sacred, you will keep attracting those who treat it as optional. Until you meet your own gaze with reverence, you will crave the gaze of others like oxygen. This is not weakness. This is wounding. And wounds, when honored, become wisdom. Jung believed the goal of life is individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, whole. This means embracing both your light and your darkness. Not denying the parts that still long for him, but letting those longings lead you inward, not outward. Not to his doorstep, but to the forgotten temple inside your own soul. You were not meant to be rescued. You were meant to remember that you were never lost. So let this pain refine you. Let the emptiness become sacred space. Let the silence become a sanctuary. Begin where you are broken, tired, unrecognizable, and listen. Beneath the rubble, your voice is still there. Faint, fierce, waiting, not for him, for you. Because the woman who rises from betrayal is not the same woman who was broken by it. She is wiser now. Not because she hardened, but because she softened in the right direction, toward herself. She no longer confuses intensity with intimacy. She no longer trades her needs for affection. She no longer asks someone to complete her, because she knows now, wholeness was never missing, it was only forgotten. There is a silence that comes after the heartbreak, but not the silence of defeat. It is the silence of gestation, of the self preparing to emerge from the fragments of who you used to be. It feels hollow at first, foreign, like standing in the middle of a life you no longer recognize. And that is exactly what it is, the aftermath of a false identity crumbling under the weight of truth. The ego resists, it grieves the illusion, but the soul exhales. Beck. Oz, finally, the performance is over. The high priestess within you knows, silence is not absence, it is presence in its purest form. A space where no one else's voice can penetrate, where no external opinion defines your worth. This is where the real work begins, not in moving on, but in moving in, into yourself, into the caverns where the little girl still waits not to be chosen but to be remembered. She remembers when she first dimmed her light so others could shine. She remembers when she was called dramatic for crying, difficult for asking, crazy for knowing. She remembers when love became a performance, a pleasing, a proving, a perpetual abandonment of self in exchange for crumbs of attention. She remembers, and now, so do you. This is the shadow work Jung spoke of, the integration of what you once rejected in yourself, not to become someone new, but to become someone whole. You will not heal by pretending to be unbothered. You will heal by sitting with the fire and realizing it cannot consume what is true. What burns away was never yours to keep, and what remains is the foundation of who you truly are. There is a moment in every woman's life when she stops waiting to be saved, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, because she sees it now. How every time she gave too much, it was not love, it was a plea, a silent cry, please see me, please stay, please make me enough. But that cry was never meant for him. It was meant for herself. And now she answers. The untouchable muse, that is what she becomes. Not because she is aloof or distant, but because her soul is no longer for sale. She no longer performs for love, she evokes it from within. She becomes the source, not the seeker. And this terrifies those who once thrived on her self-abandonment. They will say she has changed, that she is cold, that she is full of herself. Let them. To reclaim your soul will cost you the version of you that was built to be digestible. And yet, what is reborn in its place is no longer hungry for validation. She eats from the fruits of her own labor. She drinks from the well of her own knowing. She no longer confuses chaos with passion. She no longer begs to be loved. She becomes love, not the soft, performative kind, but the fierce, unwavering kind that says, I will never leave myself again. Carl Jung warned that the unlived life of the parent becomes the destiny of the child, and many women inherit the silence of their mothers, the self-sacrifice, the pretending, the shrinking. They become skilled at holding others, yet starve their own hearts. They become therapists to broken men and strangers to themselves. But the pattern stops the moment she says, no more. No more choosing pain disguised as love. No more soothing others while bleeding internally. No more romanticizing emotional starvation. The high priestess does not beg to be understood. She simply stands in her truth and lets the world recalibrate around her. To love yourself after being broken is not a straight line. It is not a glow-up. It is a descent, then a rising, a death, then a rebirth. You will lose people. You will lose identities. You will even lose your own reflection for a while. But what you gain cannot be measured. You gain sovereignty, the unshakable knowing that your value is intrinsic. You gain vision, the ability to see red flags as data, not destiny. You gain peace, the kind that doesn't require noise to feel alive. You gain self-trust, the rarest kind of love, the kind that never walks away when things get hard. This is the individuation process. It is sacred, It is brutal, it is beautiful, and it is yours. So let the world mislabel your silence. Let them wonder why you no longer bend, why you no longer beg, why you no longer smile through the ache. Let them call it arrogance, while you call it homecoming. Because the woman who loves herself after being broken is not the same woman who was shattered. She carries the storm in her chest, yes, but she also carries the sun in her eyes. She is both wound and weapon, both altar and flame. And now she knows. She was never asking for too much. She was simply asking the wrong people. There is a sacred rage that lives in the bones of a woman who has been broken and then blamed for her own pain. It does not scream. It does not beg. It watches. It waits. And when the time comes, it does not ask permission to rise. It simply does. Like a tide pulled by a moon no one else can see, she begins to move in a direction no one else understands, inward, deeper, toward herself. This is where the transformation truly begins, not with forgiveness of others, but with the refusal to abandon yourself again. Not with closure, but with reclamation. You stop asking why he did what he did. You stop wondering if it could have gone differently. You stop obsessing over how he sleeps at night, because none of those questions feed your soul. They only feed your wound. The wound has had its fees. Now it is time to fast. Self-love after devastation is not soft. It is not manicures and mantras. It is a war fought in silence. Against old stories, against inherited shame, against every voice that ever told you to be smaller, quieter, easier to love. It is the moment you look in the mirror and say, I will no longer betray you for temporary affection. I will no longer contort myself to be palatable. I will no longer shrink so someone else can feel big. This is the death of the pleaser. She served her time. She learned the rules of survival. She kept the peace. But peace without truth is just a prettier cage. And the woman awakening now is not here to survive, she is here to remember. To remember the truth of who she is beneath the conditioning, beneath the mask, beneath the ache. Carl Jung spoke of the process of shadow integration not as destruction, but as union, the marriage of opposites within the self. The sacred task of holding both your light and your darkness without shame. To love yourself after being broken is to stop hiding from your own edges. To see the parts of you that lashed out, that begged, that stayed too long, that hoped too hard, and to hold them like a mother holds her child. Because they were never proof of your weakness. They were proof of your longing. And longing, when honored, becomes fuel. But when shamed, it becomes a wound that seeks resolution in the wrong places. No more resolution through romance. No more medicine from men who are still bleeding. No more spiritual bypassing of real grief. This is the time for sacred solitude, not loneliness, solitude. The high priestess understands the difference. Loneliness is absence. Solitude is presence. In solitude, she touches the pulse of her own soul. She meets her unmet needs with devotion. She becomes the love she was waiting for. And this love, this deep, grounded, unwavering love, terrifies the old world, because it cannot be manipulated. It cannot be marketed. It cannot be stolen and repackaged. It radiates from within. And when a woman loves herself at this level, she becomes untouchable, not because she builds walls, but because she becomes a mirror. And not everyone is ready to see themselves reflected in that clarity. The ones who once pursued her for her softness now find her intimidating. The ones who once praised her for being low maintenance now call her too much. But she no longer takes their fear as gospel. She understands now. Their discomfort is not her defect. It is their confrontation. And she no longer waters herself down to soothe the thirsty. She knows what she brings. She knows what she deserves. And she knows, above all else, that no amount of chemistry can compensate for the absence of respect. This clarity is not born from books. It is born from fire. from walking through nights where the silence screamed louder than his betrayal, from crying in bathrooms so no one would see the crack in her voice, from deleting messages she never should have written in the first place, from holding herself when no one else could. And now she doesn't just survive the night, she becomes it. A galaxy in human form, unapologetically whole, unapologetically hers. There will be moments when the old self knocks again, when the urge to reach out, to explain, to fix, to prove rears its head. But this time she does not open the door. She lights a candle, she breathes, she remembers. This is not regression, it is remembering the pattern and choosing differently. That is self-love, that is healing. That is power. So when the world tells her to just move on, she smiles quietly. Not because she agrees, but because she knows something they don't. This is not about moving on. This is about moving in, into her body, into her truth, into her wild, intuitive knowing. She is not healing to be loved. She is healing because she already is. And no one can take that from her again. There is a certain loneliness that comes with healing, not the kind that begs for company, but the kind that demands you sit with your own soul. To love yourself after being broken is to stand in the ruins of what was, with no map, no hand to hold, and no applause. It is to make peace with the fact that not everyone will understand who you are becoming, because they only ever knew who you were when you didn't love yourself. And that woman, the one who tolerated too much, who explained herself too often, who mistook attention for affection, she is gone. Not vanished, but integrated. Buried not in shame, but in reverence. Because without her, there would be no awakening. Without her pain, there would be no purpose. She crawled so the priestess could rise. Carl Jung described individuation as the path to wholeness. But wholeness is not perfection. It is contradiction embraced. It is being both soft and strong, both wounded and wise, both sacred and savage. It is holding your triggers with tenderness instead of judgment. It is saying, I am still. Learning, and not using that as an excuse to stay broken, but as a reason to keep returning to yourself. The woman who has been broken and dares to heal becomes a mirror no man can lie to, because she no longer lies to herself. She no longer needs a savior. She no longer needs someone to tell her she's worthy. She has become her own oracle, and her body speaks the truth her mind once denied. She knows now what a regulated nervous system feels like. She knows now that a man who feels like chaos is not passion, he is danger. She knows now that love does not arrive with drama and leave with silence. That a man who disappears when you need depth was never capable of it in the first place. This knowing hurts, because it forces you to revisit every time you made excuses for someone who wasn't showing up, every time you called emotional absence independence, every time you labeled manipulation as chemistry. But this time the grief is clean. It does not spiral, it does not cling, it releases, because what you're grieving isn't him, it's the illusion that you needed him. You no longer seek love that drains you. You no longer prove your worth to people committed to misunderstanding it. You no longer confuse connection with compatibility. This clarity is not born from thinking. It is born from embodiment, from sitting with the ache until it no longer dictates your choices, from letting the fire burn through every last remnant of your former self until nothing remains but truth. And truth is quiet. It doesn't beg to be heard. It doesn't compete. It simply exists as stillness, as presence, as unwavering devotion to what is real. The high priestess no longer waits for the world to catch up to her value. She does not hustle for worthiness. She walks with it, and this walk is different. Her pace is slower. Her gaze is clearer. She no longer rushes into intimacy just to feel seen. She knows now real recognition is rare. It is earned, not demanded. It is offered, not stolen. So she stays rooted. And in this rootedness, she becomes magnetic, not to everyone, but to the aligned, to those who do not flinch at her intensity, to those who do not resent her boundaries, to those who see the temple, not just the flame. And yet she is not waiting. Because the final stage of loving yourself after being broken is no longer needing anyone to validate your healing. You stop performing progress. You stop pretending to be over it when you're still integrating. You allow the layers, the relapses, the revelations. You understand now, healing is not a straight line, it is a spiral. And every time you return to the wound, you do so with more wisdom, more grace, more sovereignty. The world will try to distract you. It will offer new masks, new roles, new illusions. It will whisper, "This one is different." But you have become fluent in your own body's language. You feel the warning in your gut before the words leave his mouth. You trust the dissonance more than the performance. You listen to your own no, even when it costs you something you thought you needed. Because the woman who knows her worth is not afraid to walk away, not out of pride, but out of peace. There is no longer a hunger in her eyes. There is a fullness, a knowing, a quiet power that says, "I am no longer here to be chosen. I am here to choose." And in that choosing, she writes a new myth, one where love is not survival, one where intimacy is not earned through suffering, one where she is not the sacrificial lamb but the sovereign flame. She does not need to be completed. She does not need to be rescued. She only needs to be met fully, deeply, honestly. And until then, she meets herself. Over and over again. There comes a moment, subtle but seismic, when she no longer waits for closure. Not because she received it, but because she no longer needs it. That absence she once tried to decode, that silence she once took personally, that rejection she once believed defined her worth, they all begin to lose their grip. The spell is broken, not by answers, but by awakening. She realizes the truth was never hidden. She simply wasn't ready to see it until now. This is the essence of psychological rebirth, not gaining something new, but shedding what never belonged to her. The unworthy narratives, the inherited shame, the desperate hope that someone else's love could fill the void she was taught to fear. Carl Jung wrote that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But she, the woman walking through the ruins, does the opposite. She turns inward, unflinching. And what she finds there is not weakness, it is gold. This is the stage where the outer world grows quiet, where old patterns try to tempt her back with comfort. The breadcrumb texts, the accidental likes, the vague apologies that say everything and nothing, but she sees through it now. Because she's no longer listening from her wound, she's listening from her worth. The man who once shattered her heart no longer holds her story. He was never the main character. He was the mirror. He revealed the places she abandoned herself. He exposed the fractures in her boundaries. He activated the archetypes sleeping beneath her surface. And now, the muse no longer performs for an audience that doesn't understand poetry. She speaks a different language now, one of silence, intuition, energetic sovereignty. She no longer explains her value. She embodies it. She no longer tries to be likable. She is authentic. And if that makes her intimidating, so be it. Because the woman who has come home to herself will not shrink for approval. She would rather be alone in truth than together in illusion. This is not bitterness. It is clarity, clarity born of fire, the kind that cannot be taught in books or captured in quotes. It comes only from walking through the heartbreak with eyes wide open, from feeling every ache and refusing to numb it, from dying to who she was so she could be reborn into who she truly is. And in this rebirth, she becomes sovereign. She no longer seeks to be desired. She seeks to be understood by herself first. She no longer competes. She no longer compares. She no longer looks at another woman and sees a threat, she sees a reflection. Because when a woman has met her own shadow and held it with compassion, she cannot envy, she cannot hate. She can only bow to the divinity in another because she's already met it in herself. This is the power of integration. The fragmented pieces, the pleaser, the good girl, the martyr, they do not disappear. They are brought into the light. They are held, forgiven, and then released. And what remains is essence. The raw, untamed self that was never meant to be caged. She is not hard, but she is unshakable. She is not perfect, but she is whole. She walks into rooms differently now, not with arrogance, but with rootedness. She knows who she is, and more importantly, who she is not. The world may not know what to do with her. Men may not know how to approach her, but she does not shrink to make others comfortable. She does not perform to be seen. She does not apologize for the space she takes up because she finally understands that it is sacred. This is not a performance of power. This is not faking it until you make it. This is the quiet roar of a woman who has remembered herself. And now she moves differently. She sets boundaries without guilt. She says no without explanation. She doesn't chase, she magnetizes, because her value is no longer a question. It is an answer, and only those who know how to listen will hear it. When she enters into love again, it will not be to fill a void. It will not be to heal a wound. It will not be to prove anything to anyone. It will be an extension of her fullness, a sharing, not a seeking, a communion, not a conquest. And if that love does not arrive, she is not afraid, because she has already found the one relationship she cannot live without, the one with herself. There are no fireworks in this kind of healing, no dramatic finales, just a slow, steady unfolding, a return to essence, a quiet homecoming. And in that stillness, she whispers the truth that took her a lifetime to learn. I was never broken, I was just buried, and now I rise. There is something almost holy about the final return, not to the person she used to be, but to the truth that existed long before the world told her who to become. This is not a victory parade. It is a quiet exhale, a hand on her heart, a stillness so complete it feels like being reborn into her own body. The chaos has stopped, not because the world changed, but because she did. The storm within has found its center. This is the final integration, the moment when the woman who once needed to be saved realizes she has become the sanctuary. She does not seek closure from men who could not meet her soul. She does not need validation from a world built on her disempowerment. She sees now the pain was never punishment. It was passage, initiation, a sacred breaking so that she could become indivisible. The ego resists this truth because there is no one to blame anymore, not even herself. And that is what makes it so freeing. She forgives not to excuse, but to release. She lets go not to forget, but to remember that her life was never meant to orbit around anyone else's inability to love her. Her worth is not reactive, it is eternal, and finally she acts like it. Carl Jung once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And now she understands awakening does not feel like light at first. It feels like mourning. Mourning the years spent shrinking. Mourning the love given away too easily. Mourning the girl who didn't know any better. But with that mourning comes birth. The woman who emerges does not beg. She does not chase. She does not play roles to be remembered. Read, she knows now the right ones never forget. The aligned ones don't need to be impressed. She has no need to rehearse her softness or defend her strength. She simply is, and in that being she finds peace. Not every day is fire. Some days are ash. Some mornings she still wakes up with that phantom ache in her chest, that memory of how it felt to be invisible in someone else's presence. But now she knows what to do with it. She does not spiral. She does not regress. She places her hand where it hurts and says, "I've got you. I'm not leaving. This is what it means to truly love yourself, to become the guardian of your own soul, to protect your peace with the same intensity you once used to chase love, to say no not just to others but to the parts of yourself that still believe chaos is romantic, to choose stillness, to choose clarity, to choose you again and again and again. The woman who has come through betrayal and found her center does not see love the same way anymore. She no longer mistakes adrenaline for connection. She no longer romanticizes emotional unavailability. She no longer wears her suffering like a badge of honor. Her trauma does not speak for her. Her power does. And yet she remains soft. Because softness is not weakness. It is restraint. It is choosing to stay open when it would be easier to close. It is feeling everything and still moving with grace. Her softness now comes with discernment. She does not open to everyone. She does not explain her worth. She does not audition for roles in someone else's life. The men who once found her beautiful but too much, they don't find her at all anymore. Not because she's hidden, but because she's elevated. And that elevation cannot be reached through surface games or temporary infatuation. She speaks the language of the soul now, and only those fluent in their own self-worth can understand her. She is no longer a woman waiting to be chosen. She is the woman who chooses. And that choice every day begins with herself, her peace, her body, her boundaries, her desires. She no longer seeks to be swallowed by love. She seeks to expand through it. And if no love comes, she expands anyway, because her life is no longer on hold. She is not waiting for a man to show up so she can begin. She has already begun. And the right one, if and when he arrives, will not complete her, he will meet her. In truth, in depth, in mutual devotion to self and other. But she is not holding her breath. She is breathing, fully, deeply, as if each breath is a prayer, as if each step is a reclamation, as if each quiet moment is a throne she finally remembers how to sit on. And this is the lesson, the gift, the culmination of all the pain, all the unraveling, all the grief. She is already whole. There is nothing to chase. There is only this moment, this truth, this deep, unwavering knowing that her worth was never up for debate. She was always enough. She was always divine. She was always the one. And now she knows it. Share the moment you felt most empowered in the comments below. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.